Are you still as inspired today as you were many years ago?
I lost my faith. I didn't like the sermons. Some of the solutions, one of our beliefs is that religions should work together. So the Father Moon never condemned or any other religion. I was put on the spot.
So God had called your bluff.
Why does God allow this to happen? I just couldn't understand it.
Why have you stayed in the Unification Church movement? Tell me.
Because it's so ingrained that you can't question it. Father Moon is a millionaire exploiting us. My family were worried about me.
Why did you stay in the Unification Church?
I had a spiritual rebirth experience. My family were very strong Church of Ireland members. I think my mum was in the Women's Institute and my dad was a church warden. Things were a bit tense sometimes.
Hello. On today's episode of Why I Stayed, I'm talking to Mervyn Claxton, a long-time Unificationist from Northern Ireland, and he and I will discuss and talk about why he stayed in the Unification Church movement, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode of Why I Stayed.
I grew up in Belfast. My family were very strong Church of Ireland members with Protestant faith in Northern Ireland. But my parents are from the south of Ireland, so my parents had no enmity with Catholic people at all. We were used to the south of Ireland where people were friendly and get on with normal. So it was just in Belfast, things were a bit tense sometimes. But yeah, my parents are very strong members of Church of Ireland. My mum was in the Women's Institute and my dad was a church warden. I remember before we had a car, I used to walk with my dad to church every Sunday. And that was a 4-mile walk, I think. So that was an interesting memory I have. Although I sometimes didn't like the sermons, but coming out of the church with everybody, I felt okay. I felt something good.
How old were you at this time?
I would have been 10. I think from 10 until about 15 or so, I wasn't questioning the church. I was quite happy there. And I felt
experience with God, you had faith.
Yeah, definitely. There was a feeling you're going to church for a purpose. You're meeting God. It was only after 15 I started to question things.
Okay, what happened?
Because the Church of Ireland is like a sister church of the Church of England. It's a bit formal, and the liturgy of the sermons and of the service is always read from script, so it wasn't spontaneous, and I felt a bit. It should be spontaneous, you don't want to read the same prayer every week. I mean, I was getting bored. Maybe I thought God is getting bored of this. I wanted something more free, but also I began to question that. The part of the service where you read the creed, which is your beliefs, and everybody says it together, and this is what you're supposed to do as part of the church. You have to believe this. Well, I sort of didn't believe it anymore.
What did you struggle with in the creed? The Catholics have a creed, the Holy Catholic Apostolic Church. Is it something like that in the Anglican Church?
Yeah. But also more seriously, and I don't want to offend any Christian viewers, but I began to question the belief that Jesus came to die. That Jesus came to die on the cross for my sins. The death of Jesus was a sacrifice, but actually I think it was a sacrifice that Jesus didn't want to make. Jesus was very indignant to the Jewish leaders. He said, Moses gave you the laws. One of the laws, do not kill. So why do you want to break the laws? Why do you want to kill me? And on the cross, as Jesus was about to die, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what to do.
And you were thinking about these things at 15.
Yeah.
You must have been very popular in your church circles at the time.
Well, I couldn't express it, you see.
Yeah.
I couldn't express it. No one would have understood that question. Yeah. That's the problem, I think, with the conventional religion. You can't question it.
Right.
Because it's so ingrained.
You believed and you felt like that before you joined the Unification Church, as it was called,
well,
the Family Federation, or...
Yeah, I thought of thinking that, but I had no way to resolve it.
Mm. You felt intuitively that there was something wrong with the mission of Jesus, the life of Jesus.
Well, maybe I'm jumping ahead a bit. I might have jumped ahead, but I was searching for God because the church couldn't meet my needs to meet personal God. I think we couldn't find a personal God in the church, and because I felt the community is not harmonious. You know, people come to church for the hour, and after you all split up. Of course, there were other groups and everything, but I felt it's not totally harmonious. There are not people there living together as a community.
Evangelical tradition in Belfast at the time? Was there people experiencing the Holy Spirit of being born again, or is that...
There was a youth group. I remember the Crusaders. I used to go to the Crusaders on Sunday afternoon. It was all boys group, and we'd get to talk about God and everything. So I was quite involved in that. But still, it wasn't answering fundamental needs, I think.
So this young boy of deep faith who was searching for something was missing. How did you, the next few years then, from 15 onwards up until, what did you...
I lost my faith.
Lost faith to totally.
I pushed it aside. I thought, suddenly I couldn't believe in God. And of course, growing up in Belfast during the Troubles, you wonder why are people so horrible, why are things so bad? And you think, why does God allow this to happen? And because I just couldn't understand it, and I couldn't equate it with a loving God and God who's concerned and involved in human life. So I just abandoned it, but I was in hell, to be honest, because I think people need a spiritual life.
Did you turn to drink or drugs, or was it?
No, because
the 60s.
I was lucky. I was lucky. My mum and dad didn't drink, and my uncles and aunts didn't drink. I think I had two good ancestors. Probably my ancestors were helping me, and I didn't think of ancestors then, but now I think that sometimes our ancestors are with us and helping us.
So even though you lost your faith, you didn't lose your kind of values, maybe from Protestant values.
No, I was looking
hard work and a certain amount of...
I was looking for goodness, looking for something good.
Yeah.
No, I thought it would be in the religious field, and in Northern Ireland, there weren't many other religions to go to. If I'd been in England, I probably would have gone to a mosque or a Hindu temple and sat with them for a while and spoken to them, but there's nowhere else to go, so it was like that. And it was a sort of depressing time. I was depressed about it. But,
did your parents or your family pick up on the fact that you were losing your faith, or did you maybe not show it outwardly?
Well, I think they weren't the kind of parents that were going to force me. Would drive me to church.
Did you notice that there was anything unusual?
No, I don't think I was just a normal boy. And teenagers go through these things, And
you were living at home until...
Yeah, I was at home until 25, 24, 25.
Okay. Were you working or studying?
I was working, and then I decided to go to college to get more qualifications. So I got a tech degree in H&D actually in electronics.
Okay.
And then actually some of us who were in the same group who graduated, we applied for a job in Scotland, quite a famous company in Edinburgh, and we got accepted, so we were over as a group and work in Scotland. And so I thought this would be a really happy time for me. I got my ideal job with my friends in Edinburgh, but actually it didn't feel great because of the atmosphere in the factory. People were just picking at each other and there was no harmony. And
hard to make good friends or your accommodation, I can imagine. You were probably a bunch of lads and
a bunch of lads, you know, in the same flat. So we had a good friendship, but I was searching for something and they were into something totally different.
Right.
They were into the drinking culture a little bit. And I didn't mind that, but I didn't want to get into that somehow.
Sure.
Yeah. And it was in this first year, actually, I met someone from the Unification Church.
This was in Edinburgh?
In Edinburgh, yeah.
Okay, 1975, around that time, was it?
It was late 70s, actually.
Okay, later on, yeah. So it sounds like you had a few years where you were really, we were working, that was going on.
Well, it was my career. I was interested in electronics. Right. It was the interest in, it was just science. Science and technology had an interest for me because I thought
there was still something missing in your
life.
But all in your life, in your
electronics was methodical. You could do things with electronics. I thought it's interesting.
Did you go to church anywhere, or you were searching, but did you find at any stage something?
I think I did go to a few churches in Scotland in the meantime, but anyway, I met a boy from the Unification Church, and he was in the street trying to stop passers-by, and it wasn't that he said anything interesting. He just said, "Do you believe in God?" Normally, I don't talk to people who are evangelizing in the street, but just something about his character. He was actually from Malaysia, with a very posh English accent. I later discovered he'd been a radio announcer on the radio in Malaysia. It was a very good English accent. But it was just his character, I felt was just someone I could trust.
Yeah.
And so we spoke a bit, and he invited me to an evening talk, and and there was a group of these people from different countries, and I found them very interesting, and what they were saying about Christianity, about Jesus, about how God is working in history. Found it very interesting.
This is the divine principle.
Yeah, the Unification.
This was answering some questions for you, along with the atmosphere you felt somehow starting to reawaken again your spirit, and maybe your thoughts were, or your questions that you had, maybe. Because you mentioned that you lost faith in God because, what was it? Why did you say you lost faith in God again? You questioned how God, a loving God, could
allow the world to develop, go on like this. Yeah. Why do we have to go through these traumas?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So
this
group that you met, the Unification Church group, did they give you any answers, like through what they were telling you? I think it's divine principle.
Well, it ignited my interest because they were talking about unity between religions.
Okay.
How it was possible that religions could work together, and this was something that God would use in the future, that religions should work together and not compete against each other almost. So, and there was a young growing group. It was quite interesting to talk to them, and then after a few evenings in Edinburgh, they invited me to go to a 2-day talk where there were more details, and that was very, very interesting.
So you began to understand why God hadn't abandoned you and the world and all of us, that there was some sort of plan. So
yeah, definitely.
There was a reason why there was so much suffering, basically.
Well, the reason is because we were separated from God. And God has been trying to connect to us.
And do you think other religions, what do they think or believe, in terms
Well,
of...
there's an interesting analogy I like to make. I don't know if anybody else will think it good. It's a bit childish, but I see that all religions have been inspired by God at different times in history, in different regions, because in the past there was no communication, so there needed to be different branches of religions around the world to elevate the whole world. And to me, religion has been inspired by God. It's a vehicle to advance our development. It's a vehicle to get to our destination. And so, like some vehicles might be a bicycle, analogy of bicycle. Some could be a car, or a motorcycle, then a car, and then you have a sports car, and you have a bus. They're all vehicles. They're all going to the same destination, but some are going at a different speed.
But in terms of your own personal journey, and I see you've now gone to Scotland, and you're finding this new exciting way of life or faith, and must have been challenging for you coming from your background in the Church of Ireland to this Anglican tradition to meet the, it sounds like you've got some of the answers about why the world, was such a horrible, suffering place. Yeah. And did you feel like your relationship with God was coming back to that, and with Jesus, or like?
Yeah, I think it explained, like, especially the path that Jesus had to take. That Jesus came to the chosen nation.
Yeah, what's different about this Unification Church compared to the other Christian churches? What did you think was different at the time in terms of, was it the message, was it the people? I'm sure you had warm, friendly fellow congregants in the other churches that you were, you grew up in and maybe visited from time to time. What was special about
just
these people?
Ability to talk about things, ask questions, and get an answer from other people.
Okay.
It was just saying, well, we can't discuss that, you've got to believe it.
Right.
Just an act of faith. But here they could answer questions about Jesus, like, why did Jesus have to suffer on the cross?
Right.
What was the reason that the Messiah came?
Thank you for telling us about your life so far after joining the Unification Church, or Family Federation as it's known now. How did your life change then, or did it change after you discovered this Unification movement?
Yeah, well, I was put on the spot. Suddenly God was real, and I thought, wow, God has an expectation. God wants me to do something. And of course I wasn't sure what exactly God wanted me, but I felt God has brought me to this movement, this new spiritual movement. So I thought, okay, I've got to change. And it was hard to give up my job, because I'd studied electronics, I'd come into this great company, I thought it was a great company, and now I've got to give it up. And that was a big challenge. And I sold a motorcycle.
So you felt that this, what you had just come upon, would be forcing you to make a decision to kind of give up your comforts and...
suddenly God was working now, God was working in my life. I mean,
in what way?
After this working?
Did you feel some...
At this time, I'd heard about Father and Mother Moon, who were the founders of the Unification Church, and the Father Moon had gone through extreme persecution. He had this vision of Jesus when he was a teenager, and he changed his life. He'd had to start from scratch to build up this movement. He went through so much persecution and betrayal from people who didn't understand his motivation. And so, yeah, I had to do something with my life. I had to change.
So God had called your bluff. He had revealed himself to you.
Yeah, but I had a spiritual rebirth experience. Okay. You talk about having a rebirth, but after I heard the teachings, I was sky high. I was up in heaven for a while. because when you find out that God exists and is real, that's a profound experience. And I appreciate other religious people who have this experience. It doesn't have to be in Unification Church. Any religious person can have this experience because God is universal.
And over the years then, how did this affect your family and relationships? Did you...
Well, my family were worried about me because at this time there was a lot of media publicity, negative publicity about the Unification Church, and they were portraying Father Boone as a millionaire exploiting us. And at that time I hadn't met Father Boone, but later I met my Father Boone many times, and he was a fantastic person, a very, very spiritual person, so I had never any doubt about Father Boone and Mother Boone, about their priorities, about their motivation.
Were you cast out from your family back in Belfast,
well,
community?
Of course, I was over in Scotland, so
they didn't know. Well, they didn't know, didn't have to.
Well, they worried about me. I think there was a lot of buzz around the family, about Mervyn's gone astray, the black sheep of the family. But I think I'm a stubborn guy, actually. I could have caved in, but I felt, no, I have to do this.
Sure. And how, over the years then, I mean, did you, your own family, how did you, I know in the Unification Church there's a reputation for all these big weddings, these mass weddings. Did you get pulled into one of those yourself?
Well, that was the next step.
How did you feel about that?
I did actually have a marriage under Father Boone, arranged marriage.
Okay.
This was happened in Germany a few years later.
Right.
And I met a beautiful German girl.
Okay.
And we met and we talked together, and we thought, why not try?
This is your current wife?
Yeah. We're still together, we're still in love, I think.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And, but when my parents met my wife, Roswitha, and I could see that she was a normal, genuine person, and that changed, I think.
Oh, yeah. So they didn't get the...
No, they liked her.
If they were Catholics, they might have gotten the exorcist to... They didn't need the exorcist. I don't know what Protestant think would be, but...
My wife is a very down-to-earth German person, so they liked her very much.
Okay. That's nice, that artistic connection with your family. Yeah. And I suppose over the years, have you children as well?
Yeah, three children, and we've spent time with my parents became happy grandparents, so we saw grandchildren quite often.
And so this is one of the reasons why you stayed in the Unification Church movement, because you found the answers, maybe. And also because family relationships were able to.
Family is very important, and we do have the ideal that families, that husband and wife should stay together. It's not easy, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But we have that ideal. We try our best. Sometimes you need help. Sometimes all families go through difficulties, and sometimes you need help. But it's good if you have the dream.
Why is the family so important? Isn't it important to all, Christians that they have good marriage?
Well, I found it described as a family as a school of love. Okay. This is a building block that God has given us. There's no other example where you can create love, this unique relationship of love between one generation and that generation. When you become a parent, it's an amazing experience of how much love you focus on this child. And when a child gives back love, it's amazing, dynamic. And it has to be from God. It's not an accident. This is such a powerful thing, I think.
So somebody who came from Belfast and lived most of his life in Britain, and you have raised a family within the Unification Church community. Did you have any challenges any major challenges that you said in the beginning of our interview that you had your faith was kind of shattered when when you were young. So later on, then, did you have any challenges?
The problem was we were.
Why did you stay in the Unification Church movement?
The problem was we were a young movement.
Mm.
We were all young. We were all amateurs, you might say, and even you'd be in a community, you'd have a group leader.
Mm.
My group leader would still be a young person. He didn't know how to manage people, how to motivate people. And sometimes we had to do things, and you'd be told you do this, and if you didn't like the other person, there'd be a big breakdown in communications, and someone might get upset. Sometimes that would happen, and you'd have to digest your anger or your frustration sometimes. But if you could see the purpose, sometimes you weren't always on board with everything that's happening, but you thought there was a purpose for this, so I should get on with it anyway.
How did you have the strength to deal with that then? Because obviously the teachings were telling you one thing, and then your experiences with people who maybe were immature were telling you were feeling something else. How did you cope with that?
It was because we knew we were in a struggle. We were creating a new movement. It's going to be a struggle. We had opposition, and we were creating something, so we had to be patient.
Because you're stubborn.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Well, we had an idea, I suppose, and we thought it'll take time.
Yeah.
And of course, you go through your character changes. You get when you're with other people, you get the corners knocked off you.
Mm.
You might work with someone in the past life you might not have got on with them, but now you've got to work together. You've got to overcome enmity.
So there's a value to sticking at something in terms of relationships rather than just upping and leaving if you don't agree or you can't get on with somebody. You have a purpose. That's
because we had the overall goal. We're trying to build an ideal world, and you can see everybody was trying. You can see other people were struggling, and they were trying. And sometimes people be in tears or.
Do you get depressed when you look around today? I mean, it's far from ideal, the world today. We have wars all over the place. And I know in our own country here, in Northern Ireland, and in Ireland here, we have relative peace. But do you ever get depressed or wonder if it was all, worth it, the life of faith that you have lived, the ideals? Are you still as inspired today as you were many years ago? Like, why do you stay in the Unification Church movement when the world hasn't become that heavenly place, has it?
Because we have some of the solutions.
Mm.
We have some of the solutions, and one of our beliefs is that religions should work together. So the Father Moon never condemned or any other religion.
Mm.
He always went to greet and meet other religious leaders. He tried to he spent a lot of time on interfaith movements, international meetings, sponsoring them.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted religions to work together, and I saw that this has to happen. There's so much problems in the world caused by misunderstandings of religion or are abusive. When religions abandon some of their beliefs and take on a political motivation. So we have to get to the core of religion is the golden rule where you love God and love your neighbour as yourself. They all basically believe that. And we have to stop fighting over theology and realise that God has a purpose which only comes about when all religions work together.
I mean, many people in the world today, particularly in the Western world, they don't have a religion, they don't have a faith. So what do you think? Do you think that Father Moon has a plan or the teachings that you've learned, if they were real, how would you apply them to secular or even communist sort of North Korea we see, for example, or China?
Well, you can't force your beliefs on anybody, but I think if you can create a society where there's love, where there is stability, where people are free to pursue their ambitions, and people are basically good, I think. The core, the Father Moon says that everybody has an original nature, which is from God, and which needs love and truth and beauty, and it develops. So everybody has that original nature, I think.
And that's why you stay.
Hopefully. Well, that gives me a chance to talk about that analogy I mentioned earlier. So God has given us vehicles to reach Him, and I think the Unification Church is one of the best vehicles. But that doesn't mean we're going to say we're better than anybody else, because no matter how you get to God, whatever vehicle you get, the important thing is you reach God. And God is God's not concerned about me, just me or you. He's concerned about the whole world. So if we reach heaven and God will say, well, where are your Hindu friends, where are your Muslim friends, where are your Christian friends? You go back and bring them. So once you've reached God, you can forget the vehicle. You can get out of the vehicle. You don't have to stay in your box. You've reached you might say your fulfillment of God's desire. Your love is pure and
But you can't go alone. You have to bring.
No.
You have to have your vehicle has to be full.
God is a God of universality.
Oh.
You cannot be happy if one person is left behind.
Okay.
So whoever's on the bicycle, you've got to go back and give him a lift.
The last sheep.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to you for sharing your little bit of your story. I'm sure we had
Thanks,
more
Thomas.
we
It's
could.
good to be able to talk about it.
I'm so grateful you came over to Dublin
Yeah.
as well this weekend, and thank you for
It's a pleasure to be here.
sharing your heart and your story on why I stayed.
Great.
Thank you.